In terms of what's going to happen with our weather as we look even further ahead, and well, in order to understand that, we need to look at what's happening currently out in the Atlantic, because there is a tropical storm Erin, which is expected to strengthen pretty soon. It's currently a tropical storm. Very soon it's going to become a hurricane as it pushes its way northwestwards, and then as we go through this weekend it's likely to become a major hurricane, and this could bring some significant impacts, particularly to northern parts of the Caribbean. But fortunately, if this is the forecast track, the cone that it's likely to take, fortunately it keeps it to the north of any major landfall, and so it's likely to stay out to sea, which is good news really. But you can see there is the potential that it could track a little bit further south, a little bit closer to land. If that happens, it's likely that it might not be quite as intense a feature as if it stays just that little bit further north. So there is the potential that we could see it getting closer to places like the Bahamas, for example, as we go through into early next week. But if it does so, then it's less likely to be quite as intense a feature as if it takes the more likely forecast track and keeping things a little bit further towards the northeast. Nonetheless, you would expect parts of the Caribbean to have some impacts from tropical storm, currently going to be hurricane, likely to be major hurricane Erin, in the form of some large swell, large waves, some strong winds. But hopefully the greatest potential impacts, or greatest more severe weather, is going to stay out to sea. What then happens with the forecast track of it is it keeps it going northwestwards before curling around up the eastern side of the US and then heading back northeastwards up the eastern side of Canada, and then it's likely to push its way across the Atlantic. And now, when that happens, as we often see at this time of year, a very deep low, a tropical low out in the Atlantic can really play havoc with the forecast confidence for what's going to happen as we go through next week for the UK. And so I think, well, we need to look quite far ahead, but let's get back my pressure sequence. And if we just try and find, Erin, I've got a little bit lost, but as we go through, if I just run through to Sunday, we should see. So here you can see it running through, and you can see the track that it's likely to take up the eastern side, and then it's likely to push its way eastwards. My pressure sequence doesn't go out quite far enough, but worth bearing in mind, there's another low pressure system towards the west of us in between Erin and what we currently have across the UK, and so we could see something a little bit more changeable for a time. But as Erin is likely to come across the Atlantic, there are a few possibilities. There's always going to be uncertainty with this type of feature. Now, I think what's likely to happen is this is going to push its way across, and then we could see a bit of a ridge building, high pressure building again as we go towards the bank holiday weekend. And so we could have some pretty settled weather again. We could see temperatures rising. We could have a fairly decent weekend if it's fine, sunny, warm weather that you're after. The other possibility is it comes across and it could bring some pretty unsettled weather instead. So here are some model runs from ECMWF, our various ensemble members. So we've run the model lots, or they've run the model lots and lots of times with slightly different ingredients to show possible outcomes for the bank holiday Monday. And if we just take, well, what you can see, they're pretty small, but what you can see is there's pretty large spread amongst the possible solutions for what's going to happen as we go through the bank holiday weekend, mainly as a result of what's happening currently with Erin out in the Atlantic. But if I pick two members, and they tell a very different story. Member 3 highlights high pressure building across the country, and so this could bring some pretty fine weather to many places. But then look at member 10, a very different story, has a deep low. In fact, some members have even deeper lows than this, and so then we could see some very unsettled weather instead. At the moment, it looks like something closer to member 3 looks perhaps a bit more likely than member 10, but there kind of could be anything in between. So I think what looks likely is Erin will come across the Atlantic. It's going to push in. There's likely to be a ridge of high pressure building before it comes towards us, so we will have the weather settling down for a little while. But exactly how far Erin gets across, how deep it is by the time it reaches us, and how close it gets to UK, That's still uncertain, and so whether or not the ridge that could well build as we go through the latter part of next week sticks around through the whole of the bank holiday weekend, or if instead we get something much more unsettled, well, that's the big question and still all to play for, so definitely one that we'll be keeping on top of as we go through the next week or so and head closer towards the bank holiday.